Hello, and welcome to the latest roundtable discussion of the COP30 Virtual Ocean Pavilion. My name is Katie Mitchell. I work with the Global Ocean Forum, and we're one of the co-organizing partners of this year's COP30 Virtual Ocean Pavilion, along with Plymouth Marine Laboratory and Ocean Generation. This year's pavilion benefits from over 20 collaborating partners that have all come together to organize a series of events, roundtable discussions, and features that are available online to try and increase the profile of the ocean among climate negotiations and make the UN Climate Conference more accessible for those who are not able to attend in person. All of the discussions and events organized through the Virtual Ocean Pavilion will be recorded, and they're also available for on-demand viewing through the platform after the event's conclusion. Today, we will have a roundtable discussion that is organized by the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program, and the discussion will start 3 minutes after the top of the hour to give everyone time to join the event and get settled. So on behalf of the organizing committee of the Virtual Ocean Pavilion, thank you to the ECOP program for organizing this discussion, and thank you to all of our attendees for joining today. If you need any technical support during today's call, please reach out to me using the chat function.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our pavilion. Thank you so much, Katie, for this opportunity and for the great introduction. So this pavilion is a great honor to have you all here. And this pavilion is the result of a wonderful team effort from the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program, which is an endorsed UN Ocean Decade program that has been operated since 2021. So we are a global community of almost 8,000 members from 168 countries, supported by 7 regional nodes and over 60 national nodes and 6 task teams. So as part of our ongoing commitment to inclusivity, capacity development, we've been organizing a series of events set in different conferences, for example, in Barcelona in 2024 for the inclusivity event, and also a capacity development event. Also in Nice, we had the capacity development event this year, and in these events we try to explore the challenges, the barriers and opportunities that early career professionals face, and most of all in underrepresented regions. So today's roundtable builds on those insights, and we already gathered valuable perspectives from equals around the world in these events, but it's essential that we keep having these conversations going in order to be able to track progress, identify remaining gaps, and co-create possible future solutions for a more inclusive and empowered global community. So this is why we're having this event today, and we're very happy to welcome all of you to our pavilion. And now I'm going to give the floor to Connor, who's going to explain a little bit the dynamic today.
Hello everyone, my name is Connor Savage. I'm the ECOP UK coordinator. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So today's session is going to be broken down into a few parts. So we're going to have 2 panel discussions, one which is going to be reflective, looking about experiences from the past and answering key questions of people's engagement so far, what could be better, roadblocks. And then the second panel is going to be looking really to build for the future, what's needed for truly inclusive ocean leadership, how we could do better partnerships, what new approaches should we be investigating, before we then open up to the floor to hear questions, your own views, any reflections you'd like to contribute as well. So it's going to be an absolutely fantastic session. So I'd like to introduce our panelists to please introduce themselves and their backgrounds. So if I start off with yourself, Laura.
Okay, so I'm Laura Khatib. I'm based in Byblos in Lebanon. I'm the co-founder of the NGO Guardians of the Blue. I'm the co-lead of the Ocean Literacy Task Team of the ECOP program, and I'm also an independent consultant.
Thank you very much, Laura. Paula?
Hello, everyone. My name is Paola Sangolki. I'm based in Ecuador, in the Galapagos Island. I'm the Marine Conservation Coordinator for Ocotoco Conservation Foundation. I'm a biologist, and I'm a PhD candidate in biology, economics, and ethics of ecosystems.
Thank you very much. And Udayanga.
Hello, I'm Udayanga Sampath from Sri Lanka. I'm one of the Sri Lankan coordinators of the ECOP Not in Sri Lanka. So, and I'm doing my PhD in marine mammal acoustics, and it is a great privilege to be here and discuss what we have been doing here and what we can do in the future to more inclusivity society. So, yeah, that's me.
Perfect. Thank you all. So I'm now going to hand back over to my fantastic co-moderator to facilitate our first panel. Over to you.
Thank you, Connor. And welcome to our panelists. We're going to have very interesting conversations today, and I will go straight to the first one. And for this, we want to have a little bit more of an interactive session, so we'd like you to participate. We have a Menti activity where you can please scan this code so that you can open the first question. I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer the first question. I hope it is working. I'm gonna give you a little bit of time with the QR code so you can scan it. And then we can take a look at the results. So the first question is rather about the representation of the different sectors that we can have in the marine realm. So which of the following sectors or groups are you representing today? So it seems that we have rather a varied group with the biggest representations from NGOs, which is quite interesting. In this case, well, we have really bigger representation from NGOs, mainly, and academia. So what we want to show here with these questions, we wanted to learn is to what extent which sectors have more access to these kind of events or to international conferences. And as we see, there are certain groups that dominate the participation. And this is what we want to start the first question, really, which is I would like to welcome now the panel to discuss. In your experience, how much has the Ocean Decade facilitated the participation of diverse stakeholders, for example, community members, indigenous people, or different organizations in conferences at the international level? So I would like to give 2 minutes to each of the panelists, and then we can have a quick overall discussion. So please, I will give first to Laura the floor to provide some insights.
Yes, so I mean, I feel like since the beginning of the decade, there's been an effort to create programs, networks, platforms, communities of practices, working groups through the different programs and the different efforts of the decade, which I feel like has helped. Like, for example, the ECOP program, I feel that has helped a lot of people getting involved in the activities of the decade. I think also from the organization of the Ocean Decade Conference in Barcelona, there was funding made available for some ECOPs, and I'm not sure if it was just for ECOPs or for people in general, for maybe SIDS or other countries to participate. But these are examples of initiatives that has helped. I think there's also been some workshops, some webinars, some trainings offered. So this is, in my experience, the positive aspects of the Ocean Decade efforts in including people.
Thank you, Laura. And then I would give the floor to Udayanga, please.
Yes, I think I agree with Laura to some extent, because the Ocean Decades had given the people the opportunity to work through the people, like within the country and outside the countries, so that we got the opportunity to like connect with the outside world. As a Sri Lankan, I know like how hard it is. So it has given opportunity, but I think if we consider about the coastal communities or the other organizations or indigenous people in an international platform, I think still we need to work through it, because I've seen like people get the opportunity, like if they have like nice profiles and stuff, and if they have built their profile in a nice way. But beyond the ocean decade, I think we still need to work through how to get more people in all this, because the ocean is not just like a isolated place. It's always connected to each other, and every country and every people should be come together to protect it. So I think there are still place for development.
Thank you. I think this is a valuable insight, most of all considering that coastal communities are living with the ocean every day, and are directly connected to the ocean, so their participation is valuable. I would like to continue with Paola, if you have any insights you'd like to share.
Yes. So from my experience, I think that the Ocean Decade has made tangible progress in opening spaces like for diverse stakeholders to participate. Like I agree with Laura, and I agree with Udanga that this space, for example, is one of the best examples for me. Look at all the panelists. We come from different countries, from different cultures, from different backgrounds. And I think in general terms, participation in this type of spaces is increasing. Just to give a brief example, like last year in Cali, there was a historical participation and registration. I can remember the number. I think it was over 23,000 or so. And so we know that people care about this. We know that people is looking for opportunities to participate. We know that diverse voices are aiming to be able to spread their message, to say their needs, and to be part of decision making spaces. Also, there are many Ocean Decade endorsed programs that are now emphasizing the co-creation of agendas, of research agendas, of conservation agendas, not only with governments, not only with NGOs, but also with indigenous representatives, with local communities. So I think that in that sense, we've made really good progress. However, I think that while stakeholder engagement is growing, this equity of participation and inclusion varies significantly, and there's still like a lot of challenges that remains.
Thank you. And I think we all seem to be feeling a shift and actually some advances with the Ocean Decade, which is opening so many doors. But also as these doors open, also we notice maybe certain things that or we notice new barriers that we didn't notice before because it's these new participations. For example, how the conferences are framed, the way, for example, they have been mainly done in academic way. I don't know if you have any insights on how the way they are framed, they are maybe avoiding more participation from other types of stakeholders.
Yeah, I think the way that these conferences are framed can be maybe a little bit intimidating for people outside of academia, especially because, I mean, conferences like this are usually very scientific, so people with academia already kind of have the knowledge of like what is submitting an abstract, what is participating to a conference and everything. But when you come from outside of this world, it can be really scary to just submit an abstract. Then when you learn about it, you realize that, you know, you can do it, it's fine. But all this jargon and everything is very codified. And I think that it can be scary. And I think some people or some community representatives or coastal communities maybe feel like it's not their place to be there. And maybe there would be a need to have more open communication and maybe more support in actually welcoming more diverse participation in these conferences.
Yeah, I also need to add a little bit of to that, to Laura's talk. So I've seen the same thing, like in the academia, it's like dominating kind of things, but still we have powerful voices like writers or communicators or like kind of people who can make a real difference on the ground. So that I think it should frame the way someone else like out of academia can apply for these things, like so that they can use the platform to like raise their voices.
So although other different types of activities, not, for example, this typical academic way of presenting it, for example, a presentation, you have a PowerPoint and you talk in a very technical jargon. So other kinds of activities like panel discussions, something that, because we all speak, at the end, we're all talking about the ocean, but maybe we're talking about different languages, technicalities, and so on that cannot understand each other. So also having facilitated conversations could also help people from other contexts and other sectors join this kind of conversations. I don't know if there is anything, or you have any experiences on other types of activities where you saw more participation of other types of stakeholders. So in any other conferences where you saw, for example, here we have people from NGOs, more NGOs participating, or more private sector participating, or more communities. Have you observed it in other conferences?
I think for the private sector, it's maybe more of blue economy conferences that tend to have maybe more a bigger diversity of stakeholders in terms of sectors represented. So I think they manage better to have a mix of science and private sector and NGO and even sometimes even policy involved. But yes, but it's still new also. I haven't seen that many examples.
All right. Yeah, so we see that it's advancing a little bit, but we still have some barriers to overcome. These new modes of participation in conferences, I think it's happening, and the Ocean Decade, it's helping to move towards that. I would like to move on now to the next question. So I would encourage the participants again to go to Mentimeter, and now we will focus on ECOP's participation in these conferences. So the next question is, did you or do you know anybody who personally wanted to attend COP conference now happening in Brasilia, but were unable to participate? This question was also asked during the NIES conference, and we noticed that there were a couple of experiences there that were very valuable to share as to what might be leading to or avoiding people from participating in these kind of events. And we see here that there are a couple of people who were planning but couldn't attend to the conference. And this is where it becomes more interesting, and as to why this happens and what are the main barriers. So I would like to move on maybe to the next question, which is also in Mentimeter. So it should move forward to the next question is, so what were the challenges or barriers that you or this person faced for attending the COP? So funding is always a big topic, which we have been talking about information, it's quite an interesting and new one that we haven't talked about in these, and I would actually love to hear more about it in the Q&A section. Accommodation prices, understanding of the procedures, I can imagine, information, availability. So yes, we see a number of different barriers that ECOPs around the world are facing, and we would actually love to talk we would actually like to talk about a little bit more about it, and for this, I would like to go to the next discussion question, which would be, so to what extent do you think that the Ocean Decade has helped to overcome these challenges that we saw here in terms of funding, in terms of access to information, accommodation prices? We also talked about visas in other events. So where do you think there is still room for your improvements? I would love actually you to share your experiences, what you have observed, and also as a part of a underrepresented region too, which tends to face more difficulties in this topic. So please, Laura, if you like to share your insights.
Yeah, as someone coming from Lebanon, usually there's no one from Lebanon who's able to attend these conferences, or maybe one or two people. I think, there, as we said in the question before, there has been some efforts that have been made, but I think there's really, really a need to find a solution for the funding issue. Especially conferences are often organized in countries which are quite expensive and cities which are quite expensive, and the accommodation prices are just way too high for people coming, from certain countries compared to the salaries that we get here. The average salary in Lebanon right now is $300. So how are we gonna afford to buy a plane ticket, which can be like more than 1,000, and then the same for the accommodation? So that's definitely the first big barrier, right? I've been talking to ECOPs here, and they really wanted to attend, for example, UNOC in Nice, and just there was no way for them to come. Second issue, yeah, probably the information about the conferences. Even personally about COP30, I haven't been looking for it that much, but I haven't seen that much opportunities or information about how to go there, opportunities to present or anything. So maybe that is lacking. Maybe it's lacking in general, but then also in local languages. Maybe that would help. Maybe to have some some national organizations we could help then communicate the information about the conference to stakeholders in the countries. Mainly that's it. And then the visa, that's like again a whole other story of I haven't really seen any attention being made on facilitating or helping the visa process. Usually the conference registration and everything are very late. Just don't give enough time to people to do the visa process in time. So yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Diana, do you have?
Yes, I agree with Laura, I guess, because we also have the same kind of problems in like the 1 year of our salary cannot afford like 1 week in the Western countries. So that's a huge problem. So that if we trying to get our own fundings, it's impossible to do so. Also, I think when we talk about the information, even in Sri Lanka, I don't see much information available for us. Like if you are following certain the conferences and the events, then you get the information. Otherwise, like the general public don't get that kind of information, because could be language barrier, could be like other kind of different kind of things. But for improvement, I think all the governments of these countries have the connection with this, this big organization like UN Ocean Decade like program and other different programs, so that there should be some way to communicate through them, and so that the government can improve the visibility of the information and get the information out more effectively, so that if someone wants to join a conference, then at least they can think about it, or they can work through the process. And I know there are so many academic institutions in Sri Lanka. They have the capacity to do so, but still only they only target the same kind of people to get the information and encourage them to do the same circle, like the same people join the same conferences. So I think there is room for improvement, like a government and institution can do the information more available for the general public.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Paola.
Well, I think we share the same barriers, we share the same challenges, despite from what continent we live in. So it's the same for us. As I mentioned, I live in Ecuador, and within Ecuador, in an island 600 miles from mainland. So that usually increases my travel time to 2 days wherever I need to go. So yeah, so just to recap, yeah, visas, barriers. Usually the registration process are not very user-friendly in most of the cases. I had the opportunity to participate in Nice, and it was really a nightmare in terms of timing, eventually getting a response from the organizers 1 week in advance, having to request an emergency visa appointment, and fingers crossed that I will get it because I already had bought my air ticket. So those logistical challenges remain, and I think that's like one side of the coin. But then we also have challenges in terms of the governance, not only of these conferences, but also within our own institutions, within our own organizations. Because, for instance, yes, the Ocean Decade has opened some flexibility and some opportunities for people to apply for funding, to travel, but still, for example, there are some like grants or some like that work based on nomination. So you need to be very well connected for someone to nominate you to participate and then get access to these opportunities. So we circle back to, okay, we're not like spreading the love. We're just like still working in the same status quo. And then within our organizations, and since I see that there are a lot of representatives from NGOs, I encourage that we always, now I have the opportunity to lead a program, and we should encourage this capacity building, capacity sharing among our own staff, our own collaborators, in terms of why should the same person keep going to all these conferences every year? And how do we decide when it's a good time and a good opportunity for other people to also have this experience? Because eventually, at the end of the day, also networking, which is a good opportunity during these conferences, is what will open you other opportunities for funding, for collaborating with different countries, with different organizations. So I think we need to diversify the available opportunities, and we need to diversify how we participate within our own organizations.
Thank you. So I think here we're talking about like really two central points that you all were mentioning. So the first one is, the time of when the funding is available, together with the processes that your institution has, the visa process has, and so on. So apparently you have issues to get the visa if you don't have the funding already, you're not sure. So then it gets too late, and then you don't get the visa, so you don't get to apply. So it's for people that have to apply for a visa, it becomes extra difficult then to participate in these events. And then the second part I think it's also has to do with the profiles and having the same people. So if you're not within this network and you cannot enter this network, then you practically, it's very difficult to break, you know, this bubble, enter this bubble and not enter into a feedback loop that feeds on itself. So where do you think, how do you think that you can break this cycle? Either time, the way the time is being managed in these conferences, how it's being announced, support for visas.
For me, for the logistical side, I'm not sure, but for the participation side, to to ensure maybe more diverse representation, I think what helps is that if we take the reins. So for example, in Nice, like the ECOP program had the opportunity to organize some side events. So we were able to put on the stage the people who are never seen in the conferences, so for like, because we had the opportunity to have this power to actually organize a side event and have a say in like who will be on the stage, even though, okay, it's the stage of a side event, it's not the main stage, but still. So I think this helps. But there's also another thing that I want to share is that, even if we manage to overcome all of these barriers of funding, of visa and blah, 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 and we manage to get a seat in a panel or something, there's also a bit this risk of being used as a token of like either ECOP or youth or coming from an underrepresented country, and then just being invited to a panel just because of this. But then in the end, it doesn't really change anything, or there's not a really meaningful inclusion. It's just, for the sake of. So, but I don't have a solution for that. But I think this is also an important thing to touch upon, is how do we actually get meaningful inclusion in these spaces.
Thank you, Laura, for sharing that. I was actually thinking the same. And speaking of barriers, I apologize because I had to turn off my camera because I'm having connectivity issues. But I also wanted to share that, like, I've been invited in quite several panels just because basically we tick the box, and so we really need to move forward from participation to true leadership. We need to, for me, something key is to promote these intergenerational partnerships, intergenerational participations, where you combine both experience but also new perspectives, new experiences, new voices. And also, I feel that in the last years, the formats of these conferences have been driven by like global targets that sometimes people, local community, indigenous people, does not necessarily feel related to. I think we need to also promote more spaces for solution-driven like workshops, solution-driven panels, side events. And I think in that way, people will start caring more about what can they offer or bring to the table. Just to give you an example, here in Galapagos, while 80% of the population depends on nature-based tourism, people don't feel or don't relate with conservation. They don't feel that conservation impacts their life. And so how do we break this barrier? I think it's just like bridging the gap between truly incorporating local knowledge, local leadership into the decision-making processes by opening spaces where people feel that they have an opportunity to bring their inputs.
One more thing, I need to add one more thing to that. So I've seen the same, like the question they ask for the conferences, like pretty similar, like they're very formatted questions, so that if someone found a way to like exactly answer the same questions, they get the opportunity, because every time they ask similar question, and the people who have the ability to like, use the same example over and over again, they get the opportunity. So I I have seen that, and I think it should be different from each other, the conference or any other event. Like they should ask like a unique question, so someone unique, some unique person can attend that event. So I think the way they ask questions should be changed as well.
Yeah, I think this is where we connect between the both questions that we have, and that these barriers that we're talking about do not only apply for ECOPs, but also apply for the different sectors and their participation. And I think that by having these barriers, we are missing on so much diversity and new perspectives and new solutions for unprecedented challenges that we're facing right now in the ocean. So having these new voices included, having new ways of asking questions, being creative about how the conferences are being held, different spaces that are available, and considering also the practical challenges for these stakeholders to participate, that we were talking about visa funding, and also the availability of network and information that we have, because there are many differences and challenges for these stakeholders. So we see some improvement from what I hear, but we're also seeing still many challenges that need to overcome. I think we touched upon them very briefly here, but we also have new ideas. I don't know if there's any final thoughts that you'd like to share before we move on. If not, I would actually love to give the floor to Connor, who's going to lead us through the next section of the panel discussion.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And that was so interesting to hear everyone's perspectives in terms of those reflections on the past. And we now look forward to the future. So what do we need to do for build for that future of inclusive ocean leadership? So we're going to do a little bit more audience participation here. So if we can just move on to the next slider, please. There we go. Perfect. So the question here is going to be around what forms of capacity support are most needed in your region. So training, funding, mentorship, policy inclusion, etc. So really interesting to see what people's breakdown is here. Give everyone a few seconds just to put it in. Money, yep, that's definitely a big problem. Funding, funding is obviously one that's, yep, there we go. I can see it pop up there as well. So funding and money. Going to say funding quite literally off the screen there in terms of something people have identified. Training, yep, I can see that from somebody. Yeah, funding to go to events, mentorship. Okay, mentorship catching up with funding there, which is completely fair because I guess speaking from my own experiences through mentorship, that helps you build your network, build your experience in terms of who to reach out to about different things, and therefore that might lead to new avenues of funding. So very much connected there. Yep, opportunities, comes to find my way, connecting with policymakers. Now, some absolutely fantastic thoughts from people here. So that kind of leads then on to my first question as part of the second panel, which is, in terms of the panelists, how can we strengthen regional and local capacity development to ensure equitable access to opportunities? So I'll come to yourself, Udayanga, first for this one, if that's okay.
Yes, I think this is really good question that we need to like discuss, because I know the people like the opportunities trying to come through like the global north to global south, but sometimes it's not delivered properly because someone come and then train people and then they go. That I don't see. Sometimes it works, but sometimes that does not build the capacity we want. So I think if we can build more collaborative opportunities like among the regional capacity, like some organization may have like a good technology and the others one can have like a good the human resources, so that if we can combine these two organizations, that we can build more like sustainable, like a connection between these organizations, and then they within regionally they can share more capacity. And if fundings and stuff available, that then it should be connect all those the local and the regional organizations, so that I think it will enhance the accessibility of all these resources.
No, that's a really great point there. Obviously, it's not about just coming in and providing temporary support. It's about building that hub within which different groups can try and build experience, new projects, work together locally and regionally, as you say. No, really fantastic point there. I'll come to yourself, Laura, next, if that's okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with Udayanga. I think there's really a need for like local-led training and capacity development based on, you know, the local needs and the local context. This is really needed. You know, different regions, different countries have different needs. And I think it's, you know, also having an interdisciplinary capacity development, so maybe not just aimed at you know, students of marine science or biology, but maybe, you know, I don't know, scuba divers, you know, water sports people, like just all different kinds of stakeholders. I think which could benefit from capacity development. I think it could also be interesting to have some knowledge exchange, I think, within regions, but also maybe between different regions, maybe more south-south than north-south. I'm not sure, but I think like every time I discuss with, you know, peers from other countries, I always learn a lot, and we realize we share the same struggles, like today, for example. So I think that can be really interesting. And also, I mean, if there is collaboration between region and countries, this could potentially help, you know, countries which have more funding or more resources could support the countries which are a bit more struggling in this regard. But I think, yeah, maybe there's a need for more strength and regional cooperation. I think that might help, you know, and I think that might help also to have more representation afterwards.
No, fantastic. And as you say, I guess it's about trying to provide support from different countries, different organizations to try and help ensure that everybody has what they need in terms of trying to make this unified progress against us, with us all. As you say, great point. Paula, your thoughts?
I'll say two things for me are key. One is moving from competing with each other. I feel like we're always competing for funding, competing for who gets to go where, who gets the big room for the big side event. So I think that shifting from competing to true partnerships, to true collaborating teams, it's a key element, because just as Laura mentioned, we share the same struggles, we share the same challenges. So, like, really working together in a transparent way, I think open opportunities for everyone, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? So, right now, just to give you a short example, we're working on a big island restoration initiative, and something historically happened, like 6 different organizations, different sizes, decided to work together. And then there was this first question, right? Please share your 4 names of your most important donors so we can put together like a pool of donors that we can reach out to in a coordinated way. And everyone was like click until like 3 days after one organization finally decided to say, okay, if we want this to work, we really need to trust each other. So we need also to work on trust building. And then the other thing for me, it's also like shifting from this like one directional capacity building to actually capacity sharing. So I think there's a lot to learn in both ways, where we actually get to listen to local indigenous people, to youth, to uh, all the all the stakeholders at the table, right? So like giving them the same opportunities to share their knowledge, to share their expertise will help to bridge the gap between access to these opportunities, right? So I think that also aligning these global priorities to local context, to local realities, also will help stakeholders to care and to work on their own agendas and to want to be part of the decision-making processes.
Thank you very much, Pal. That's really great. I guess, as you were saying there, it's about trying to adapt to the local environment, the regional environment, to make sure that you get that really good stakeholder buy-in with whatever you're working on. So that's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to turn back now to the audience again. So I've got another Slido question here, if we can just bring that up. So this question is around what partnerships could most effectively strengthen inclusivity in the next phase of the ocean decade. So if we can see people putting in your answers from the audience then. Regional, yep. As we said, and as we heard from the panel there, making sure we have regional partnerships is just as important as the global ones, if not arguably more important. Academia, NGO, so making sure we get that cross-sectional, cross-sectoral, someone's highlighted as well, between different areas. The science policy society matrix, yep, absolutely a really important one too. NGOs, yep. Okay, so we got consulates get visas. I can see some more around intergenerational. Now that is a really good point as well, which is making sure that early career is adequately engaged and involved. Local communities and NGOs, yep, another critical one as we've heard. I can see youth there as well, so very much important, youth and early career. And the private sector, ensuring that we have industry on board too. Now, absolutely some fantastic points from the audience here. So thank you very much all for them. So if I then move on to our next question for the panel. So this is, what approaches can amplify underrepresented voices and improve language inclusivity in global ocean dialogues? So I'll do this in reverse this time. I'll go to Paola first for your thoughts.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't unmute. So I think a good start will be something as basic as requiring interpretation, for example, to overcome language barriers, and also to document these translations, right? Because our knowledge or understanding of specific languages can vary. And also be open, like in these different formats, like we need to be open to also adapt to the conditions. For example, during NICE, I was in a CMAR, this is the Eastern Tropical Pacific Corridor event, and everyone at the room but one person speaking Spanish, and yet we had to be speaking English because that was like the official language. And even though some panelists were struggling with speaking English, even though everyone at the room speaks Spanish. So I think we also need to have that flexibility to adapt to these conditions for very specific cases, but also again from the governance from our own countries. We cannot expect to make a change at a regional level if we don't start at a local scale, national scale, and then we can start talking about regional. And also, I will say, based on what we just saw in the answers in the Mentimeter, this trust partnerships will only work if we work in trust building. So we need to work on that between universities and NGO, local governments and NGOs, local governments and local communities, and from there scale up those efforts at a regional level. No, I think that CIMAR, it's a really good example of this. 4 countries, 4 presidents working together because they all agree that they need to work to protect that region. Actually, they're working on a legally binding instrument. So I think that there's like a momentum right now. And I think that the Ocean Decade can support this type of initiatives. And during that process, we need to truly include local voices. Like again, and I'm going to repeat this, but participation, it's not the same as leadership. Socialization, it's not the same as participation. And consultation, it's not the same as building consensus. So I think we really need to have clarity on the extent of how we want people, local communities, indigenous people to be involved in scaling up these efforts at a regional level.
Thank you very much, Pal. No, completely agree. There's some really fantastic points there in terms of those different tiers of involvement and making sure that they're truly genuine rather than potentially just at the surface level, and how you can build from one tier to the next through that genuineness. Fantastic. I'll go to Laura next. Laura.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Paola said. And for example, in Nice, like there were some side events that were in French. And I mean, so why not having side events that were in Spanish or in Arabic or in other, languages that are spoken by multiple countries? This is something that, it's not fair. And I think it would make sense. I wouldn't be shocked to have some side events, that are specific for a region who all share the same language, because we all know that we can all talk much better in our native language than in English, right? And if it's like a regional side event, then, why not have it in that language? So I think that's important. I think there's a role of technology that has to play in this. I don't know. For example, recently we were at a conference in China, and there were screens on the side with live translation. As the person was speaking, there was what he was saying in his own language, and then under it was directly translated in English. So I'm not sure like what's the technology behind this, but I've seen it happen. So why not just make this mandatory? I'm sure there's a lot of ways that technology could help with translation. So I think that's something, and I think in general, maybe to amplify just underrepresented voices, maybe we could do also something to make hybrid events better. It's also, I guess it's a bit tricky, but I guess, if we found a way to make people attending such events remotely, really engaging, I think that could open so many doors. I think that would be, that could have a lot of potential. And I think, again, as we were saying, and also as Paula was saying, I think there's really a role that regions and regional organizations and committees have to play in this, in bringing people together, in sharing information in the local language, in supporting regional stakeholders to attend these conferences. I really think that the key is at the regional level. So maybe, I don't know, strengthening partnerships, maybe the Ocean Decade or other organizations need to create new regional bodies. Yes.
Thanks very much, Laura. And as you say, the point there around obviously the regional focus as well as the global focus is one that we're seeing, I think, coming through all of the answers we've spoken about today in terms of the questions. So thank you very much for that. And Udayanga, your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with what Laura and Paula, but I also have two things that I need to mention. Once these conferences or the events happen, we usually only see the output in English language. So I think if possible, if we can translate these outputs in several languages and share with the governments or the organizations so that they can access, that would be really, really benefits. And also, I want to refer back one of my the points before I discussed. When we think about the participants, I think bringing the writers, like the communicators and storytellers, like journalists, I think that's really important for them to get, the opportunity to join these kind of conversations, because they can come back to their countries and they can work through it, and they can do quite a lot of things in their own countries. They can translate the key messages, and they can talk to the organization and then combine them together. So there's so many things that we can do with the language barriers as well. I think that's the two key points I wanted to mention here.
Thanks very much, Shundi. And as you say, if people do get the opportunity to engage and get involved, as you say, they can then go back and convey those messages, convey that information, and try and build future engagement and build that momentum, as we've heard, is so critical moving forward. So I'll turn our attention now to the final question I've got for the panel before I then look towards the audience, which is, we've heard already quite a bit around the importance of that geopolitical inclusivity, breaking down those barriers. So it is the key question, which is, how can we get that geopolitical inclusivity embedded into the Ocean Decade's future governance and decision making? So I'll come back to yourself, Udayanga, to kick us off with this one.
Yes. I think when we think about the geopolitical inclusivity, I think it is really important to think about like we choose an affordable country and who can afford the like do a big event. So I know that even some smaller countries have the capacity to do big events. So that if we can find such countries that would be beneficial more people, so that if it's a visa restricted, if they don't have visa restrictions, or low budget people who can join the stuff. So the people need to think about how all these countries combine to this effort. And also when we think about like these kind of big the programs like UN Ocean Decade, we need to think about whether these countries have the capacity to achieve these high goals. Like when the decisions making happening, they should think about how best they can achieve these the high goals. Like if we think about Sri Lanka, we are going through like a very difficult economic crisis and the political unrest. Now it's becoming much better, but still we are going through that circle. So I think it is important to think about whether we can afford that such high goals, or whether should ask them to provide their own ideas and their own goals to achieve these goals more effectively, rather than like putting huge like burden on them. That's what I think.
Really fantastic point there in terms of breaking down the typical barriers, again, the way of people being able to engage, and you've identified a couple of really important ones there. Laura, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, but I think I mean, I'm not 100% familiar with the governance and the decision-making process in the Ocean Decade. I think it needs to be a neutral space. I think it needs to be a space where everyone, regardless of which country they come from, should feel welcome and should feel safe in being in these spaces. I mean, there needs to be representation for every region. I mean, when we talk about ocean issues, right, there's no barriers, everything is connected. So in terms of, geopolitical issues, I think it's always a bit tricky with everything going on in the world right now. But yeah, it should be a space that is safe and neutral. So I think I need to learn more about, the governance process of the Ocean Decade, but I think in general, we need representation from every region, and ideally we need ECOP representation and community leaders representation in the decision-making process to ensure really, truly inclusive decision-making. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. And that, as you say, obviously, all of this is a learning process as well. Like, it's equally as important to know what we know about this, but it's also equally as important to know areas where more learning would be beneficial. And that is the case for myself. I imagine that's the case for all of us in terms of knowing that there's areas where more learning would be useful in this space. And if I now turn to yourself there, Paolo, for your thoughts on this one.
I think I agree with what you've both have mentioned, and I will translate that into decentralizing leadership and ensuring representation, authority, and decision making is just, is equitable, diverse, and inclusive, right? And I will also say that if we want to somehow make an impact on the governance or in the or on the decision making process, we also need to work from a bottom up approach and not top-down process. Like, for example, who gets to decide the funding agendas? Who gets to decide what are the priorities at a regional level? Are we including local voices and perspective in these processes? That's really really key for me, because if we cannot come up with a relevant agenda where all stakes feel represented or relate to, we cannot make an impact or we cannot make a change in the governance or in the decision-making process. And also, we've discussed, and I remember when we were discussing in the Mentimeter about partnerships, and often we also think like from a north to south partnership, but I think we also need to think horizontally, because together we are stronger. So if we aim to get to bigger partnerships, to bigger collaborations, we first need to start collaborating with each other in our own small scale, and from there start pushing for policies that implies a more inclusive governance framework where inclusion is a cross-cutting aspect and not another tick in a box.
No, thank you very much, Paolo. And I think that kind of moves on nicely in terms of what I was going to ask the panel, which is, does the panel have any overarching thoughts from all of the questions and all of the side of things we've had as this part of the panel before we turn and hopefully hear from the audience?
I think we are moving forward with like there are some nice the improvement of these inclusivity, and ECOP is the best like the best example I can give, because we started the ECOP not in Sri Lanka like very recently, and we are moving forward with like with more collaboration within the region and outside the regions as well. So I think yes, we are moving forward, but still there are things that we need to consider. Hopefully, beyond the UN Ocean Decade, we will be in a really good place that we may not need to discuss the same things again and again. Let's hope for the best.
Perfect. And Paola, Laura, any final thoughts before I open up to the audience? Laura, I can see you nodding, so I'll go to yourself first.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I started my journey with my NGO and just my professional journey almost at the same time that the decade started and that the ECOP program started. So I really felt really lucky to be able to benefit from all the opportunities and to kind of follow the evolution of the decade of all the different programs. So, I think that it has done a lot, and as we were saying, it can do much better. But I think we're having the space to discuss about this and to find solutions together and potentially to make this happen, maybe by 2030. Let's hope.
Thanks, Lauren. Paola, any final thoughts before we turn to the audience? Don't worry if you don't have any, that's absolutely fine.
No, I just want to echo everyone's previous thoughts. Like, hopefully, we are not discussing the same in the next ocean decade, but if we have, like, I really think that these spaces give us hope, because I think we're in a good track. We're making good progress, and I think that for me, actually, it's really inspiring to see this this type of conferences, this type of formats come together where more people can have access to, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. There's still a lot of other places where we need to bring these messages and these opportunities. But I just want to thank everyone for making this possible and for giving us this opportunity for raising up our voices and sharing with everyone our own experiences and thoughts, and not only bad things, but also proposing solutions, proposing new things to do, giving ideas, and working together towards a common objective, towards a common vision.
Thank you so much, Power. And as you said, there, it's so important to give people the spaces to give their own experiences, their own impressions. So we're going to now move into a bit of a Q&A and reflection area. So what I'm going to ask is if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask our panel, or any reflections they'd like to offer up in regards to any of their experiences in relation to what we've discussed here today, you can either put them into the chat feature and I can read them out if you'd prefer for me to read the question or read the reflection, or alternatively you can raise your hand and we can bring you off mute to speak directly. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to either start filling out in the chat feature, or alternatively to raise your hands if you have any reflections you'd like to just say live as well. Because if anyone is typing, I know you'll have to have a few seconds to type it out, so I'll give you a few seconds to do that.
Thanks, Connor. And if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody's faces.
Yes, I think that'd be best, especially if people are hopefully going to be raising their hands to speak. I was going to say, I can't see any hands yet or anything in the chat feature, so I'll probably just jump in myself here to try and hopefully get the ball rolling a little bit. So obviously I know we've spoken about the past, looking forward to the future, and obviously there's a lot to draw up and a lot to work on moving forward. But I guess one that I'd probably want to expand upon in terms of my own experience would be around that capacity support in terms of what's needed to help people being able to engage and get more involved. And we saw earlier with the slide that a lot of the key issues are in relation to either funding, which I think is true for everybody, regardless of region, to be honest, in one way, shape, or form, or alternatively in regards to mentorship, which I kind of equate as well in terms of gaining the experience necessary to build a network and gain access to that funding. And one experience I'd like to draw from, as I said, from myself is as someone who isn't involved in academia in terms of the day job, so it doesn't have an active institution. I know that a lot of the funding pots you traditionally might be able to gain access to are unfortunately blocked off. You can't access them as someone who might be in business or somebody in the policy space. And therefore, one thing for myself is I've become a bit more reliant on organizations I volunteer with or my own network. And as a result, it's taken me a bit longer to get to a point to be able to get funding to go to stuff in person. And obviously, it doesn't always work. There are times where the funding challenge is just too great to surmount, or there's just so much competition for it. In terms of being able to get to potentially more expensive events as well. So I know, for instance, with Nice, obviously it was in Nice in the summer, so not the cheapest place to be, unfortunately, and therefore issues in terms of funding for accommodation or travel. I know people had issues with that, but just a thought from myself. There, I can see we've had question here from the audience from Verlita. So thank you very much, Verlita, for your question. So I'll probably pose this question to the panel, which is in terms of improvements in inclusivity from before the ocean decade started to today, do the panelists have any views in terms of changes they've seen with inclusivity they might be able to attribute to the ocean decade, or how it's improved over time? I won't put this on one particular person. I'll wait to see if someone says they're happy to speak to it. feel free to nod if you're happy to take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep,
yeah.
perfect.
As I was saying before, like I started this journey like around 2020, 2021. So like around the time that the Ocean Decade started. But so I'm not really sure how it was before, but I think the fact that it started with COVID and everything, and then everything was online. So like this is how I was able to participate. I think maybe before that it was a bit more rare to have online events and such, so much information shared online. Like I remember at the very beginning of the decade there was so many meetings and webinars and everything, and I just learned a lot from these, and I was able to connect with people that usually meet in conference rooms, and I was meeting with them on Zoom. So I think this is great in terms of inclusivity. Well, obviously, that period was quite specific, but I think it really helped in shifting the way we do things. But yeah, I would be interested to know if anyone was around before the start of the Ocean Decade, and like how was it before that?
So I was going to say, just speaking for myself here, Laura, I think that I completely 100% agree with you, which is the move to online meetings, the ability to work with teams across the planet. Like for instance, give an example, like the training and mentoring task team within the ECOP program, as you're well aware, is a truly international intersectoral team. I'm pretty certain that there's someone always awake from the team because of the spread of the time zones. And as someone who did some volunteering pre-COVID, post-COVID, and how things have changed in terms of the move to online, I do think things have been easier in regards to being able to build those international teams, being able to engage with others who may not have had the opportunity to engage in person due to those funding logistical challenges we've discussed. So I definitely would put that in the positive column in terms of something that has got easier for people is through those online. Obviously, it's there are still people where the access to the online meetings is still a barrier, and we have to look at ways of trying to remove that barrier for them or trying to support them with the wider logistical issues. But for many people, from those that I know, the ability to work online with other people to the scale that we have seen in recent years has really opened up opportunities for them to engage that otherwise they simply wouldn't have had. But like yourself, Laura, if there is anyone from the audience who would be able to speak to this, would be able to offer their views, please do pop it into the chat or raise your hands up as well. And we'd be happy to hear from you. I don't know if Paula or Udianga, you have your own thoughts on this you'd like to chip in, or
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Paula, please.
No, you go.
All right, thanks. So I think after the Ocean Decade program started, I think in Sri Lanka, in my experience, the people start getting noticed. These kind of different kind of the programs, events, and especially the online events. So I think they are trying to get involved more and more. And now we are ECOPs, like trying to give the people, the young professionals, more opportunities, like trying to connect different the researchers and different organizations and bring them to discuss our discussion. So I think it has improved. Online basically, but in person participant, I think yes, there are few people participated in the conferences and stuff, but I think it's still that's also a good sign. So it will improve in the future.
thank you very much,
Yeah,
Udianga.
I agree.
Yep, Paula.
I agree that there's been progress. The fact that in some conferences it's already like a requirement. I know it's not ideal, and it sounds bad to say it's a requirement to have either a young professional or to have someone from local community or to have a woman sitting in your panel. I know it's not ideal, but I think we're on a good track because eventually this behavior will become embedded within our own. It will be like intrinsically implicit that these type of formats work. Again, it's it's not ideal, and we would like this to happen naturally, to flow on its own way. But I think that acknowledging that this needs to be done, it's a good first step. Also, I'm happy to see also in the last 2-3 years in the latest conferences, to see voices, to see faces that we've not seen before. Like to see last year, I in Barcelona, I was in a panel that was completely like the 4 panelists were fishermen from different cities in Panama, for example. So for me, this was really like inspiring, regardless of what they were complaining or requesting about, just to see them participating in these spaces and to be like able to, like say, these are my struggles, this is my reality, and this is what I need, this is what I demand for you. I think it's also a really good step. Also in Nice, there was a panel about like all women. It was really inspiring. Everyone ended up crying. And again, like watching fishers like taking the lead on these spaces was truly inspiring. Again, challenges remain. I know it's not the ideal situation, but I think we're making really good progress.
Thank you, Paola. And as you say, it's great to see when those positive elements do happen and we do see that change live. I think my fantastic co-moderator had a point.
Yeah, sorry. Just a real quick one regarding the progress. I actually this year in it was really nice to see Costa Rica also being a co-organizer of the conference, and there was, for example, a special event happening within Costa Rica, which was really nice before the conference in Nice happened. And I think that's one of the signs that, this co-organization happening with regions that are underrepresented, it can help a lot. Of course, there's always a lot of room of improvement in terms of, I would have loved actually to Costa Rica to have a more active role within the conference. Because we had people from Costa Rica represented, but maybe like a little bit more in participation in panel discussions and important panel discussions, as Paola was saying, not only participating, but actually be leaders and actually be um, participating in the decision making.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of harkens back to what we were saying earlier about those tiers of engagement and saying how it needs to be meaningful, and you need to ensure meaningful engagement is built up over time to get that deeper and deeper involvement to build towards that leadership. So some absolutely fantastic points here. I can actually see we've got someone from the audience who has contributed. So thank you very much to Abigail. So Abigail has said the importance of incorporating ocean literacy into schools, media, and I'm guessing social media campaigns. Completely agree with that. I think ocean literacy is an incredibly important thing to develop. I think drawing from my own experience, one thing I would say here is as part of one of my roles is as a local councillor in Edinburgh in Scotland, and one of the things that I did there is a motion called the Motion for the Ocean, which made Edinburgh the first council in Scotland to make an ocean recovery declaration, bedding ocean recovery into all strategic decision making, but most importantly, committing to ensuring that every child in the city has the opportunity to visit the ocean at least once whilst in primary school. So that's 45,000 kids today, never mind the kids in the future. And it's about building that ocean literacy for them about what the ocean means for them so they understand the impact on it and try and inspire that next generation. So some really important ones there. Great point, Abigail. A very one that matters a lot to me personally as well. I'm just going to quickly see if we have any other hands up or any other points in the chat. I'm not seeing any at the moment, so I'll go to another question I can see here, one from Casey, thank you very much, which is, how can ocean practitioners engage with partners to bridge silos and ensure ocean issues are integrated into broader environmental movements and initiatives? So basically, how do we break down silo behavior, work together and make sure the ocean isn't being dealt with in isolation, but being dealt with holistically in the broader environmental movement? Laura, I can see yourself nodding there, so if I can come to yourself first, if that's okay.
I mean, I agree with the relevance of the question. I'm not sure if I have answers, but like it's very true that I mean, and even me, I'm always focused on like ocean specific events or things that are specifically ocean, and then it's just ocean people. But then when you look at, you know, environmental protection events, like in general, that the ocean is really often you know, not represented there or a minority there. So I think that that's very important. I'm not sure how we can bridge that gap. I'm not sure, you know, if it's for us, for the ocean community to just start to get maybe to get together and to actually try to have a better presence at these events, maybe to learn more about these events. But I think that's a really key point because, you know, the ocean is always the least represented, I would say, in environmental protection, often forgotten. SDG 14 is the least funded of all the SDGs, etc. So maybe it's on us to actually make the effort to try and change that. I'm not sure.
It's a really important point, Laura, and I think a big part of it stems from the fact that, and it genuinely I think can be as simplistic as this, which is people can see what's going on land with their own eyes, whereas what's going on underneath the ocean, since people genuinely it could be something as simplistic as that, which is since people can't see it with their own eyes, or apart from the lucky few, it's it's harder to actualize it for a lot of people. But obviously, in terms of coast communities, they can see the impact. But if someone lives inland, if someone doesn't have the opportunity to visit the coast, it can be very hard to convey
And
that impact.
and I think that also take us to Abigail comments ocean literacy, right? Like to position ocean as vital for our health, as vital for food security, ocean regulation, livelihoods. But because I still remember when we live in islands. I live in an island, and I sometimes I don't get it why people does not feel connected to the ocean. You know what I mean? So I think ocean literacy plays a key a key aspect to overcome this. And also, I think we need to reframe ocean conservation, and we need to think of ocean conservation as part of the climate agenda, as part of the biodiversity agenda, as part of human well-being agendas. We often have this like sectorial approach where we sit together to discuss about climate solutions, to discuss about ocean solutions, to discuss about biodiversity solutions, but we won't get to a solution unless we see where all these three aspects converge. So I think that's also another key aspect to consider and think about a co-benefit framing. Like it's not just about the ocean, but everything that the ocean implies, and eventually that implies well-being for us. And I think that's part of the problem as well, that in our narratives we see ourselves as something that it's outside of ocean, outside of biodiversity, but not that we are part of nature.
100%. I think trying to do in such a way really helps people get into their mind on the impacts and that kind of thing. I think, Joel, that is I think a fantastic point. I think to close off the Q&A reflection part. Thank you for the audience for the participation there, and I will now hand over once again to my fantastic co-moderator to wrap up and provide our closing remarks. But from me, thank you very much for everyone for listening and engaging. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Connor. I feel flattered. And thank you for all your insights and all these great conversations. I think we've had a lot of very practical solutions and guides towards what we can move forward, which was great during this discussion. And I would like to focus on mainly 3 points that we talked about, which is the first one, the big topic was about funding. And here we talked about timely funding, the ways we can communicate better, provide the information necessary, the ways that governments can help with this information so that this ensures a more diverse participation and inclusion in these kind of conversations. And then we talked about representation in terms of not only now we need to move forward from only representation, but actually participation in decision making and leadership, which is a great point that Paola made. And then at the end is within this participation is bringing in all the stakeholders can provide new insights that can, for example, provide, as Udayanga was saying, give journalists and storytellers the opportunity to participate so that they can bring in this new information in their own languages. Also, diversity in people organizing these events and decision making so that they can bring in also the perspectives from this underrepresented region as to what are the practicalities behind this diversity. If we put all these together and so many other points that we talked about, I think we touched upon great points, and I really want to thank you all, Laura, Paola, and Udayanga for your great insights. Connor, also for your great moderation during this panel, and also all of you for joining us in these discussions. You're always welcome to provide us and to join the ECOP program. We're more than happy to have you. Our goal is to have a network and collaboratory build on solutions, read at the regional, the national, and international level. So we want to thank you also for this opportunity to be here to share our thoughts, and I hope we see each other either online or in person in another conference, and hopefully we move forward from these conversations toward other topics so that we know that we're actually building the ocean we want. So thank you very much.